If you've ever watched a climbing video on YouTube and thought, how do they film this? How do they get down? And whose foot is that? Well, you're in luck. I'm this guy. My name's Kieran and I'm a professional adventure photographer, and in this video I'm going to give you guys a look at my experience filming for two world-class YouTubers.
Everybody always asks, like, how did the cameraman get up there?
In a joint effort to quench their insatiable thirst for views, Pete Whitaker, professional crack addict, and Mike Boyd, professional learner of things, teamed up to throw Mike head first into the intimidating world of trad climbing. The goal was a trip to the stunning crags of Norway for a 200-metre vertical adventure.
But it was his idea, so he can't really blame me.
I really love the blend of adventure with the technical and creative skills that are needed to shoot rock climbing, so I'm super excited to give you guys an insight into my experience behind the lens and in the harness shooting on a real job. This video is really just skimming the surface on a lot of the technical details, so if you are really interested in climbing photography, please do subscribe for more content, and you can check out information on my workshop in the description below. We started with a couple of days in the Peak District at Wide Boys HQ and the historic trad climbing venue of Stanage. Pete had a few objectives in order to prepare Mike with the skills that he would need for the multi-pitch in Norway. But my main goal at the start of any project is to dial in my technical systems and get a feel for the team, because I think good banter means good footage. And I think that's even more important when you're working with people who are going to be pushed out of their comfort zone, with all this stress and the vulnerability that comes with. So I always try to really build a friendly dynamic with the people I'm working with, and thankfully it was really easy with these guys. One thing I didn't really expect was how different it would be working with a beginner versus a professional athlete. Normally I'm kind of the invisible man behind the camera, but with Mike, he kind of needed a little bit more support and encouragement. So I was more of a participant than I actually expected. That's it, mate, come on. Nice one, man, just relax. So Stanage was the perfect opportunity to really get a feel for that. And I think that relationship of cameraman / therapist really started to develop in Norway as things got a little bit more intense. We had 6 days in total, but we only had 2 days before some apocalyptic storms were rolling in. So Pete had to pick us up directly from the airport and we had to rush straight to the crag. After a successful tea delivery for Pete, we quickly grabbed everything from the suitcases and set off. One of the most common questions I get about shooting climbing is, how do you get up there if you're not climbing? Let's talk about it. The basics are actually quite simple. Pete would lead the pitch as normal, but if you look closely, you'll see a third white rope attached to the back of his harness. That's my rope. It's not actually a climbing rope. I always use either a full static rope or a semi-static rope. They have way less stretch than a climbing rope, so it's much more efficient when you're ascending, and they tend to be a bit thicker and beefier and hard wearing. So when Pete gets to the end of the pitch, he'll build a typical trad anchor, secure my rope to it, and then give me the go-ahead.
Yep, the white is fixed!
It's a little bit weird to think that if everything goes to plan, Pete and Mike will climb the entire day without actually weighting anything, whereas I spend the whole day yanking on Pete's anchors and jugging up on it. But thankfully, if there's anyone I trust to build a bomber anchor, it's probably Pete. There's so many systems that you can use to ascend a rope, all with pros and cons, but that's probably a huge video just on its own. My go-to system uses one ascender, also called a Jumar, with a gree-gree and a pulley. It's pretty lightweight and super versatile, especially for sport climbing routes, which is where most of my work is. But it's not the most efficient way to ascend long multi-pitch routes.
How's your journey up the wall been, Kieran?
Yeah, it's good, mate.
Yeah?
It's one of those ones where I feel like climbing it would be easier in some ways. If I had to do it again, I probably would have packed a few extra bits of kit just to give me some options. But on the plus side, this setup gave me a load of free exercise. So once I'm all set up, it's time to ascend the rope using the Jumar and get into position. As I move up the rope, I'll periodically tie an overhand knot in the dead end of the rope just so that it can't slip through the gree-gree. Even though a lot of people use it for this type of stuff, it's not actually officially rated as a self-belay device, so it's good to have knots in the end. So there's no retakes on a shoot like this, so as I set off, I'm thinking a lot about where I want to position myself, where the most interesting moves are, and what's going to look best on camera. Once Mike starts climbing, I'm focused on being stable, framing all the action, and keeping things in focus as best as I can. I juggle two cameras. One has a medium range zoom lens, and then I'll switch over to my other camera, which has a wide angle lens for when the action gets a little bit closer. Then it's basically a game of cat and mouse, with the climber coming up towards me and then me figuring out when I can actually ascend up to the next spot to get the next sequence. And we'll basically just leapfrog each other the whole way up the pitch until we get to the anchor and find Pete. We'll sort out all the kit and then we'll get ready to do it again until we get to the top.
Nice.
Nice one.
It's a good afternoon, that wasn't it?
Yeah, that was good. Smashed it. And this is always a common question on YouTube. How do you get down? And the answer...
Don't worry, we'll get to that. We only had one more day to get some practice in before the storms rolled in, so Mike was going to have a go at leading. To film somebody leading a pitch, we still have to fix my rope first, so Pete quickly ran up the pitch first, fixed my rope, abseiled back down, and then I just ascended it the same as before. Everything was going pretty smoothly on day 2, so I was generally back into my invisible cameraman mode, only giving a little bit of advice here and there for Mike when he needed it.
We're really cutting it fine on the rain. Definitely split spotting some more. It's going to be close.
So for speed, we decided to ditch the fixed rope for the final pitch and just fire up the drone. I've only had the drone for less than a year now, but I'm super impressed with the quality of the footage from such a tiny, lightweight package. But you can see it's really fighting against the wind as Mike was reaching the top of this final pitch. But it was so good to watch him topping out, especially because he'd led 2 of the 3 pitches from that day. So Mike's main objective for the whole trip was to lead some pitches on a multi-pitch trad route. So as far as he was concerned, it was job done, mission accomplished, we'd beaten the weather, we'd got to the top, time to walk off and drink super expensive beer for 3 days until we needed to go home. But I think Pete and I both knew that we could go a bit bigger. Although this was the biggest thing that Mike had ever climbed up until this point, we knew that there was so much more that multi-pitch trad climbing could offer. So we spent 2 days training indoors, watching the weather forecast and trying to convince Mike to head south and just second a longer, harder multi-pitch route. So we packed the bags, and on day 5 we drove south for 5.5 hours. The weather was clearing, and after windy roads, countless bridges and 2 ferries, we got to a beautiful tiny village. I went for a short walk with the drone, and I couldn't believe how lucky I am to be able to visit and work in amazing places like this. Day 6. Another early start and a 45-minute drive finally got us to Deerdal. There was just one tiny problem. The rock was absolutely soaked.
Gonna be later. Back to the cafe.
So after 4 or 5 hours, the sun had finally come round and started to dry the rock, and it was looking way better, but we were way behind schedule. We started the approach, but not before stopping to shoot all the YouTube thumbnails, which Mike assures me is super important.
Recording. Testing, we're recording. We're about to climb an epic big wall.
Although this route was twice as long as the others that we'd done already, we started it the exact same way, until we hit the first snag, literally. As Pete was climbing up, my rope got pulled to the side and got caught in a tree at the base of the crag. Mike actually had to climb up, pull my rope up, holding it in his teeth, and then throw it down the other side of this huge flake. The next little surprise came when Mike broke a hold off of the wall.
Fuck.
Watch your head, Kieran!
Which is not actually that uncommon in multi-pitch trad climbing, but really reminded us why it's important to wear a helmet when you're climbing in the mountains. Ascending up through the trees wasn't exactly fun, but the first couple of pitches went pretty smoothly after that. We were getting great shots, we were having fun, enjoying the nice weather. It was going to be chill.
I said to the guys down there that there were no traverses on this route, but there is a traverse. But there we go, that's the beauty, that's the joys.
A short, awkward traverse meant that there's no way for me to actually ascend the rope because it's going sideways to the next belay. It's not ideal because it meant that I would need to climb across the rock in my trainers while unclipping from the gear, belaying myself and managing the rope as I go. It was easy climbing and I was actually kind of glad to finally touch some rock, but it did get the heart rate going a little bit. I should also point out that I'm still tying knots in the rope as I go, and the rope is a semi-static rope, so it wouldn't hurt me if I did slip off. We all got to the next belay in one piece, and then after that, things started to heat up a little bit. Pitch 4 was long. It was steeper, it was full-on climbing from the start until the finish. Once Pete was up, I quickly brought the drone down and got ready to set off. All right, mate, I'll see you up there. I'll be with you the whole time. So I got to the obvious resting point halfway up, and Mike was coming up, really giving it the beans, but he was doing well and finally powered through and got the good holds. Nice. I've got some breathing space, time to move up into the next position while he rested. Good effort, mate, holy shit. But Mike had other ideas. He just kept going. So in the footage, I'm cheering Mike on, but internally, I'm having a bit of a panic right now because do I stay here and try and film something in case something happens? Or does Pete have enough coverage from the top of the climb so that I can move position? I spent a bit of time faffing around, but then eventually fired up the rope as quickly as I could and just managed to beat Mike to the hardest part of the pitch. Come on, mate. I can't. That's it. I can't.
You got it.
I can't fucking do it.
Footholds on your rep. Footholds on your rep. Come on. One more up with the leg.
Ah!
Come on.
Ah!
There, come on, keep going. Come on.
Come on, Mike. This is the sort of stuff that I came here to film, and I was so happy that I'd captured that desperation and the effort, and also relieved that I'd got the goods. You know, I felt like the guys would be really happy with that footage. But we still had one more to go. Pete set off on the final pitch. It was such a pleasure to film Pete from the drone, absolutely cruising through this sort of terrain. But with that said, it did look a bit tricky. He was using a lot of great technique, and I was kind of glad that Mike couldn't see that on the controller. My 50-meter rope didn't have a single centimeter to spare on the final pitch by the time Pete had fixed it to the anchor. It was an absolute monster. Halfway through, Mike had scraped his way up to the good rest, but seemed absolutely shattered. He sat there begging me for snacks that were in my bag. In hindsight, watching back the footage now, we probably could have put a bit more effort into trying to actually retrieve them, but we decided not to bother.
Honestly, walk a wee bit, don't go all the way up there. Need you here.
I'll still be there. I'm just gonna be right past this yellow bit of gear. Yeah. I used to work as a climbing instructor at an indoor wall, so it's not the first time I've ever had to give a pep talk to a struggling climber, but I just never expected to be doing it 200 meters up a cliff in Norway. I'd basically forgotten about the filming at that point and was just trying to give Mike the support and tell him what I thought he needed to hear. It's all feet, Mike. The hands will come, just keep working the feet up. Come on, Mike, you can do it. And just stick that foot out behind you, it'll take a lot of weight off. Press, press, press. Really good, Mike, that's it. And then once you get up here, you're done. Come on. Just relax, get the right foot a little bit higher. Come on.
Come on, mate.
I see it.
Come on.
Yeah, come on. Nice.
Come on, Mike. Yes. When I watched Mike top out from this relatively easy route on a top rope, it was one of the most memorable ascents that I've filmed in my entire career. I'm so freaking it's so good. It was amazing to have been there to capture it, but also to have been like a participant in that process.
I can't believe I actually did that.
Yeah.
If you weren't there, I would have just quit. Probably don't put this in the video, but yeah, I really had to dig deep to do that, man. That was fucking crazy. Yeah, fucking pumped. That was like from the bottom of whatever I had. Yeah, that was nuts. Cheers, man. Cheers, Pete.
Yeah,
Really
nice
appreciate
one,
it.
nice one.
That's more.
It really reminded me of how much amazing stuff climbing can actually bring to your life. You've basically got two options to get off of a route. You either walk or you can abseil. In Norway, we actually did both, depending on the route, but I'm guessing that you want to hear about one of them. It's very important to make sure that you have adequate footwear when you're hiking. So, abseiling. On larger routes with permanent abseil points, half the challenge is actually just finding the anchors. The end of day one was a bit of a treasure hunt along the top of a cold and windy crag looking for two very elusive bolts in this sea of rock. And then on the final day, the route actually finished exactly at the abseil anchor, so that was really straightforward. So to abseil, you thread them through the ring on the anchor, you tie the ropes together, you put some knots in the end so that you can't lower off the end, and then you throw the ropes down the cliff. One by one, we attach ourselves to the rope with a friction device and lower ourselves down. Once you're at the next abseil point, you can attach directly to the anchor and free the rope for the next person. And once you're all down, you pull the rope through and you repeat it several times until you're back on the ground. It's the last light at the end of our week-long trip to Norway. And what a way to finish the trip. It's been such a good day out. It's been long. It's 9 o'clock at night and we have a 5-hour drive back to Bergen to try and catch our flight first thing in the morning. So we're not quite done yet, but yeah, what a day, what a view. The drive back sucked. Pete was an absolute hero and drove the whole thing. I sat in the passenger seat copying over hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes worth of footage from all the different cameras. We missed one ferry by 3 minutes. I had the worst sandwich of my entire life, which cost £10. We got back to Bergen, picked up all our bags from Pete's place. He drove us to the airport hotel at 5 o'clock in the morning. We had just about enough time for a quick power nap and then straight to the airport at 8 AM to catch our flight back home to Scotland. And that was my experience filming for Wide Boys and Mike Boyd in Norway. Thank you so much for sticking with me if you've made it this far in the video. I really, really do appreciate it. If you want to know more about climbing photography, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer all of them. If you want to see what I'm up to just now, you can find my website and my Instagram. Links are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.